We need to discuss these papers.
At 2:47 a.m., my husband's message lit up my phone. I'm at Lydia's house. Pick me up or it's over. I typed back, it's over then. A minute later, I forwarded his location to Lydia's husband, Gavin Cross. By morning, my ex was on my doorstep, teary, desperate, and homeless. That's when I realized peace tastes better than revenge. Your husband is at my house with my wife. Gavin's voice came through my phone at 2:48 a.m., exactly 1 minute after I'd forwarded Ethan's location. Before we continue, if you believe no woman should ever be deceived, discarded, or made to beg for the respect she already deserves, make sure to subscribe. It's completely free and helps us share more stories of strength and renewal. Just like Aurora's. Now let's see how she turns betrayal into clarity and finds peace on her own terms. That I had expected Ethan to call, to beg, to explain why he'd sent that ultimatum from Lydia's house. Instead, it was Gavin calling from Dubai International Airport, his voice calm, steady despite what I'd just revealed. How long have you known? He asked. About 60 seconds longer than you, I replied, staring at Ethan's message still glowing on my screen. Pick me up or it's over. We both knew it had been over for months. This was just the official notification. The strange thing was, 3 weeks earlier, I had sat next to Ethan at my mother's dining table, still pretending we had something worth saving. That Sunday dinner haunts me now, not because of what happened, but because of how hard I was still trying to unsee the obvious. My mother, Margaret, had made her famous pot roast, the one she only made for special occasions, and she kept going on about how perfect Ethan and I were together. 4 years next month, she said, raising her glass of wine. You two restore my faith in marriage. Ethan squeezed my hand under the table, his palm damp with what I now know was guilt. His phone buzzed every few minutes, and each time he'd glance at it, type a quick response with his free hand, then return to carving meat like nothing was pulling him away from us. But I saw how his shoulders tensed with each vibration, how his laugh at my brother Daniel's fishing stories came a beat too late. Forced and hollow that night, I told myself I was imagining things. That's what denial sounds like, a whisper dressed as reason. The following Tuesday, I found the receipt while doing laundry. Mon and Shandon, $127.43, purchased at 11:47 p.m. He'd said he was dealing with a server crash at the office that night. The paper was creased from being shoved deep into his jacket pocket, like evidence hidden in haste. That I stood in our bedroom holding it, feeling something fundamental shift in my chest. Not heartbreak, not yet, just the cold recognition that I'd been willfully blind. I tucked the receipt in my purse and said nothing. During dinner that evening, I watched him perform the role of devoted husband while my family ate it up. He refilled my wine glass without being asked, told the story about how we'd met at that gallery opening 5 years ago. His hand on my shoulder as he described falling for me instantly. My mother smiled so wide. My father, Richard, nodded approvingly. Daniel's wife, Olivia, kept saying we were couple goals. The irony wasn't lost on me. Everyone saw what they wanted to see, just like I'd been doing for months. The next mornings became the most telling performances. Ethan still made coffee for both of us, but now he'd angle his body away while reading texts. His phone tilted just enough so I couldn't see the screen. Our goodbye kisses had devolved into brief, obligatory brushes of lips so quick they barely registered as contact. He started showering at night instead of mornings, filling our apartment with cologne that seemed too intentional for sleep. Big presentation tomorrow, he'd say, already heading to the bathroom at 10 p.m. with his phone in hand. That I would lie in bed, listening to the water run longer than any shower needed, wondering if he was texting her behind that locked door. The smell of his new body wash would drift out, sharper, more expensive, more carefully chosen. Everything about him was becoming sharper, more curated, more distant, and none of it was for me. The company summer picnic had been the moment I should have known. 2 months before that 2:47 a.m. message, we'd all gathered at Green Lake Park for volleyball and barbecue. Gavin Cross introduced his wife, Lydia, with such pride. His arm around her waist, calling her my better half without irony. She barely made eye contact with me when we shook hands, her smile too bright, too brief. But when Ethan told his story about the Peterson account, the one he'd supposedly been working late on, Lydia laughed like it was the funniest thing she'd ever heard. Her hand landed on his arm and stayed there as she pointed out the dessert table, such a small gesture. yet it carried the kind of intimacy that made my stomach drop. Later, during volleyball, I caught them sharing a look across the net. Not a glance, a look. The kind that carries whole conversations, secrets, promises. Ethan missed the ball because he was watching her, and everyone laughed except me. That I stood there in the July sun, sweating through my sundress, finally understanding why he'd been so eager to attend a company picnic he usually complained about. That was the day I stopped looking away. That I started noticing the gym membership charge on our credit card. Not for the gym 3 blocks from our apartment, but one in Fremont, right near Lydia's neighborhood. I began tracking how every Peterson account emergency perfectly coincided with Gavin's travel schedule. The Thursday night before that Sunday dinner at my mother's, Ethan had called at 7 p.m. to say he'd be late again. His voice had that practiced casualness that tried too hard to sound normal. "Peterson's being difficult about the quarterly reports," he'd said. "Don't wait up." I stood in our kitchen holding the lasagna I'd made, his favorite, the one with the homemade sauce that took 3 hours, and simply said, "Okay." Because what else was there to say? I ate alone at our small dining table, scrolling through his social media, discovering he'd liked every one of Lydia's posts from the past month. Beach selfies, morning coffee shots, inspirational quotes about following your heart and how life's too short for regrets. Each heart emoji he left on her posts felt like a tiny betrayal, a breadcrumb trail leading straight to an inevitable conclusion. When Gavin called me at 2:48 a.m. from Dubai International Airport, his voice surprisingly calm, I realized we had both been watching our marriages dissolve from different continents, him from hotel rooms in the Middle East, me from a half-empty bed in Seattle. "I just bought a ticket home," he said after our initial exchange. "I've been collecting evidence for weeks. My sister Haley's been sending me screenshots from Lydia's Instagram stories, but I needed concrete proof. And I just gave it to you," I replied, my voice steady in the darkness of our apartment. "Aurora," Gavin said, and I heard the weight of what came next. "Thank you for not letting me be the fool any longer than necessary." We ended the call without saying goodbye. Two strangers united by the same betrayal, about to navigate the wreckage our spouses had created while we were still trying to save something already dead. That I sat there in the dark, Ethan's ultimatum still glowing on my screen, realizing this moment had been building for months. Every receipt, every shifted phone screen, every late-night shower, they had all led here, to 2:47 a.m. on a random Wednesday, when the pretense finally ended and the truth demanded its due. The credit card statement arrived. The following Monday, tucked between grocery store flyers and a water bill. I almost missed it. Would have missed it if I hadn't been searching for answers after Gavin's call. My hands were steady as I opened the envelope, but what I found inside made them shake. Fitcore Gym monthly membership, $180. The address? Fremont. Nowhere near our Queen Anne apartment, but exactly 3 blocks from Lydia's Colonial on Maple Avenue. That evening, Ethan came home with fresh energy, his dress shirt clinging to his body in new ways. His shoulders broader, his waist trimmer. That I had noticed the changes before, but told myself it was stress. Maybe he'd cut back on beer. "Maybe we should start working out together," I said casually, folding the credit card statement and placing it on the counter where he'd see it. "There's that new place on Pine Street running a couples special." He was washing an apple at the sink, his back to me. His shoulders stiffened. "I actually prefer working out alone. It's my thinking time. Before the day gets crazy." "Right," I said softly. "Fremont's pretty far for thinking time, though." The apple stopped moving under the water. He turned off the faucet slowly, deliberately, then turned to face me. "It's near the office. I go before work sometimes." His office was downtown, nowhere near Fremont. We both knew it. He bit into the apple anyway, the crunch too loud in our quiet kitchen, and walked past me without another word. The credit card statement remained on the counter, untouched, unchallenged. A lie we both silently agreed not to name. 2 weeks later came my sister Sophie's wedding, a test I was destined to fail. The invitation had been on our refrigerator for months. The Fairmont Hotel downtown, a black tie evening affair. I'd bought a new navy dress with subtle beading, and Ethan had promised we'd make a weekend of it. Maybe stay at the hotel, have brunch the next morning like we used to when we were dating. That morning, while adjusting his tie in our bedroom mirror, he said, "About the hotel, I checked the rates. It's $300 a night. We should probably just drive home after." "Sophie's wedding is once in a lifetime," I said, already knowing where this was going. "We'll stay for the ceremony and dinner," he replied. "But I've got that early meeting Monday. Need to prep Sunday." His reflection wouldn't meet my eyes to the reception. I watched Sophie and her new husband, Michael, dance to their first song. Ethan stood beside me, his hand resting on my lower back in that performative way he'd perfected. My cousin Olivia approached during the salad course, her voice gentle with concern I didn't want to acknowledge. "Everything okay with you too?" she asked while Ethan was at the bar. "He seems distracted." "Work's been demanding," I said automatically. The excuse so practiced it came out smooth. She nodded, but her eyes said she didn't buy it. "If you ever need to talk." Ethan returned with our drinks just as the main course arrived. His phone buzzed. He glanced at it, frowned, then stood up. "I need to take this. Peterson's having another crisis." He walked toward the lobby, phone already pressed to his ear. I watched him go, noting how he ran his hand through his hair as he talked, a gesture he only made when nervous. 10 minutes passed. 15. Our food grew cold. When he returned, his hair was slightly messed, his shirt untucked on one side. "Peterson okay?" I asked. "Yeah," he said, sitting down quickly. "Just needed to talk through some numbers." 2 more times during the reception, he stepped out for urgent calls, each time returning with something slightly off. His collar adjusted differently, a faint smell of perfume that wasn't mine. His wedding ring turned on his finger as if it had been removed and hastily replaced during Sophie's bouquet toss. While all the single women gathered on the dance floor, my cousin leaned closer. "Ethan's been gone a while," she murmured. He had 20 minutes this time. Through the ballroom windows, I could see him pacing in the lobby, phone at his ear, gesturing with his free hand. Not the movements of someone discussing spreadsheets. "Aurora," she said softly, "you deserve better than whatever this is." I wanted to tell her she was wrong, that she didn't understand how much pressure Ethan was under. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, I just watched my husband through the glass, wondering who was on the other end of that call, and what she was worth missing my sister's wedding for. The next Thursday, book club ran short. We'd been reading a thriller about a woman who discovers her husband's double life, and the discussion had been uncomfortably pointed. Too many sympathetic glances in my direction that I left early, claiming a headache, and drove home in silence. Our apartment windows were glowing when I pulled up, which was odd since Ethan had texted earlier that he'd be working late again. I climbed the stairs quietly, turning my key without a sound. The door opened to reveal Ethan on the couch with his laptop, video chatting with someone. The screen faced away from me, but I could hear a woman's laugh, bright, familiar. The moment he saw me, he slammed the laptop shut so hard I thought he'd cracked it. "You're home early," he said, standing too quickly. Book club ended early. I set my purse down and noticed the small things, the details I'd been too distracted to catch before. 2 wine glasses on the coffee table, though one had been hastily pushed behind a stack of magazines. A candle burning on the mantel, not one of ours, something expensive that smelled like jasmine and vanilla. Throw pillows rearranged on the couch, creating a cozier space than our usual setup. "Who were you talking to?" I asked. "Connor," he said without hesitation. "He's planning something for your birthday. Wanted my input on restaurants." "My birthday's 4 months away," I said flatly. Connor had never planned anything for me in the 5 years we'd known him, but Ethan's explanation came out in a rush, words tumbling over each other about surprise parties, keeping secrets, and wanting to make it special this year. The candle flickered between us, its unfamiliar scent filling our home. I walked to the kitchen, noting the wine bottle on the counter, a Pinot Noir that hadn't been there this morning. 2 glasses used, one hastily rinsed and placed in the drying rack. "Connor drinks beer," I said quietly. "He's trying to be more sophisticated," Ethan replied, his voice suddenly flat. The next morning, I found the candle in our bathroom trash, wrapped in newspaper like evidence being disposed of. The wine glasses were in the dishwasher, run overnight, as if that could wash away whatever had happened in our living room while I'd been discussing fictional betrayals. 3 days after that came Gavin's goodbye party at the office. Lydia had organized it, of course, printing photos of Gavin's various project successes and arranging catering from his favorite Thai restaurant. She wore a black dress that seemed too formal for an office event, her makeup perfect despite the tears she kept dabbing away with tissues. 6 months, she said to the gathered crowd, her voice trembling. 6 whole months without him. Gavin stood beside her, his arm around her waist, looking uncomfortable with her display. When he caught my eye across the room, something passed between us, a quiet recognition of the performance we were both witnessing as people began mingling. Gavin approached me near the coffee station. Aurora, I wanted to ask you something. He pulled out his phone, adding my number to his contacts. Would you mind checking in on Lydia occasionally? I know she says she'll be fine, but 6 months is a long time. Behind him, I watched Ethan place his hand on Lydia's shoulder, leaning in to whisper something that made her laugh through her tears. Of course, I told Gavin, saving his number. I'll keep an eye on things. The temperature had dropped to 38 degrees by the time I pulled into my parents' driveway on Thanksgiving, 3 months after Gavin's departure. The house glowed warm against the November darkness, windows fogged with kitchen heat. I sat in my car for a moment, checking my phone one more time. Ethan's last text from 2 hours ago. Running late. Start without me. My mother, Margaret, had the dining room set for 8. The good china, cloth napkins folded into swans, her grandmother's silver candlesticks polished until they gleamed. She'd been cooking since dawn, the turkey a golden masterpiece surrounded by every side dish our family loved. Daniel and Olivia were already there with their twins, my father Richard stationed in his recliner watching football, the house alive with laughter and normalcy. Where's Ethan? My mother asked, not for the first time, as she handed me the green bean casserole to place on the table. He'll be here soon, I said, my tone practiced. Work emergency. The lie came easily now. By 6 o'clock. We couldn't wait any longer. The twins were getting restless, and the turkey was starting to dry out despite my mother's careful foil tenting. We sat down, Ethan's empty chair screaming his absence. My father said grace, his voice carrying that particular tone of disappointment I remembered from my teenage years. T7:15. My phone buzzed. Lydia's car broke down. Helping her get to a mechanic. Don't wait up. I read it twice. Then set the phone face down on the table. Of course, Lydia's car. On Thanksgiving, when every mechanic in Seattle was closed and her husband was thousands of miles away in Dubai. The table went quiet. Everyone pretended to focus on their plates while stealing glances at Ethan's empty chair. Is everything all right, honey? My mother asked softly, covering my hand with hers. Her touch was gentle, but her eyes were sharp with concern. Ethan's helping a coworker with car trouble, I said, cutting my turkey into smaller and smaller pieces. My father set down his fork with deliberate precision. The sound echoed in the silence. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. Richard Hale had been married to my mother for 37 years. He'd never missed a family dinner for someone else's crisis. By 8 o'clock. My mother was wrapping leftovers in aluminum foil, creating careful packages labeled with masking tape. For Ethan, she said, though we both knew he wouldn't eat them. She pressed a container of stuffing into my hands, then pulled me into the kitchen while the others watched football. Marriage is hard work, sweetheart, she whispered, washing dishes that didn't need washing. But it shouldn't be this hard. The drive home felt endless. Every red light gave me too much time to think about where Ethan really was, what he was really doing. Our apartment was dark when I arrived, cold in that particular way that meant no one had been home all day. I put the leftovers in our refrigerator, still labeled in my mother's careful handwriting, and went to bed alone. Ethan came home at 1 a.m., sliding into bed smelling like wine and someone else's perfume. His breathing was deliberately steady, as if pretending to sleep could make me believe nothing had happened. The following Tuesday, I sat in Dr. Mei Chen's examination room, my blood pressure higher than it should have been for a 32-year-old woman. She'd been my doctor for 6 years, had seen me through a miscarriage Ethan and I never talked about anymore, and she knew my body's patterns better than I did. The anxiety medication doesn't seem to be working, I told her, twisting my hands in my lap. I can't sleep. My heart races randomly. I feel like I'm waiting for something terrible to happen. Dr. Chan set down her tablet, studying me with a mix of clinical concern and quiet compassion. Aurora, is everything okay at home? The question cracked something open inside me. Words poured out, the late nights, the gym in Fremont, the receipts for dinners I hadn't eaten. The way Ethan looked through me now instead of at me. That I talked about the 2 wine glasses, the candle that wasn't ours, the Thanksgiving dinner with an empty chair. Dr. Chan handed me tissues I hadn't realized I needed. What you're describing sounds like situational anxiety caused by ongoing stress, she said gently. Medication can help, but it can't fix a relationship that's causing you harm. She wrote 2 prescriptions, one for a higher dose of medication, another for a therapist named Dr. Eliza Nguyen, then pulled open a drawer and handed me several pamphlets, recognizing emotional abuse, gaslighting in relationships when love hurts. I'm not saying this is what's happening, she said carefully, but education is never harmful. And Aurora, taking care of your mental health isn't admitting failure. It's choosing survival. I left with a paper bag full of resources I was too embarrassed to read in the parking lot. The therapy referral stayed in my purse for a week before I finally made the call. The next interruption to my careful denial came from Haley Cross, Gavin's sister. She called my work line on a Wednesday afternoon, her voice cautious, like someone approaching a wounded animal. Aurora, I hope I'm not overstepping, she began, but I need to tell you something. My stomach dropped. Is Gavin okay? Gavin's fine, she said. It's about Lydia. And your husband. The office suddenly felt too small, the walls pressing in. I could hear my coworkers typing, living their normal lives while mine tilted off its axis. What about them? I asked quietly. Lydia has a private Instagram account, Haley said, her voice trembling. She thinks I don't follow it, but I do, under a fake name. She's been posting things. Photos that suggest. God, I don't even know how to say this. Just say it, Haley. There are photos of them together, she said finally. Captions about finding happiness in unexpected places. And one said, when you know, you know. I took screenshots. I can send them if you want. Or we could meet for coffee. No, the word came out sharper than I intended. I mean, thank you, but I can't. Not yet. Haley was quiet for a moment. I understand. But Aurora, you're not crazy. What you're suspecting, it's real. And when you're ready to see the proof, I'll be here. After she hung up, I sat at my desk staring at my computer screen without seeing it. Paula from accounting stopped by to drop off some reports and found me frozen, my hand still on the keyboard. Honey, you okay? She asked softly. Something in her tone told me she already knew the answer to be why the time the corporate Christmas party rolled around 2 weeks later, I'd stopped pretending, even to myself. The venue was beautiful, the Fairmont's ballroom decked in gold and silver, a jazz quartet playing standards, and an open bar that Ethan visited with increasing frequency. I wore a red dress I'd bought specifically to remind him I existed, but he barely looked up when I emerged from the bathroom at home. We arrived separately. He'd gone straight from work while I'd gone home to change. When I walked in, I spotted them immediately, Ethan and Lydia, standing by the dessert table. Her hand was on his chest, laughing at something he whispered in her ear. They weren't even trying to hide it anymore. During the CEO's speech about company values and integrity, I watched them drift toward each other like magnets. When the dancing started, they were on the floor for every slow song, his hand too low on her back, her face pressed into his shoulder. Our coworkers pretended not to notice, but I caught the glances, the whispers behind hands. Paula appeared at my elbow during the way you look tonight, pressing a gin and tonic into my hand. My Uber's coming in 20 minutes, she murmured. You're welcome to share it. I watched my husband sway with another woman to a song we'd danced to at our wedding. Lydia's eyes were closed, a small smile on her lips. Ethan's wedding ring caught the light as his hand moved up her back. The gold band I'd placed on his finger 5 years ago now looked like nothing more than decorative metal. Make it 15 minutes? I told Paula that as we waited outside for the car. The December air bit at my skin. Paula squeezed my shoulder. You know, the whole office knows, right? We've all been wondering when you'd finally be done with his garbage. I thought about Dr. Chen's pamphlets, about Haley's offer of screenshots. About my mother's careful leftovers and my father's disappointed silence. About the empty chair at Thanksgiving and the cold bed I'd returned to night after night. The slow unraveling was almost complete. Soon there would be nothing left to untangle. The Uber dropped me home that night, and I knew something fundamental had shifted. Not broken, shifted. Like tectonic plates realigning before an earthquake, I stood in our dark apartment, still wearing the red dress Ethan hadn't noticed, and made a decision. If my marriage was going to end, it would end on my terms. The next Wednesday, I sat across from Vivian Cole, a divorce attorney whose office occupied the 17th floor of a glass tower downtown. Everything about the space, clean lines, muted colors, spoke of expensive efficiency. "I found you through a coworker's recommendation," I said, my voice steady but my hands cold. Vivian adjusted her glasses and opened a legal pad. "Tell me everything," she said. And I did. The gym membership in Fremont. The missed holidays. The overnight bags packed for late meetings. The Christmas party where they danced to our wedding song. Vivian's expression didn't change, but her pen moved quickly. "You've been documenting things?" I nodded, pulling out my phone to show her the folder I'd created. Screenshots of credit card statements, photos of receipts, text messages with timestamps, a spreadsheet tracking Ethan's work emergencies against Gavin's travel schedule. They aligned with disturbing precision. Vivian set down her pen. "Aurora, you've been smart. Smarter than most clients who walk through my door. The documentation will help. But we need to protect you financially before he knows what's coming." She explained Washington's divorce laws clearly. Community property, spousal support, my apartment lease, thankfully in my name. "You can legally remove him from the lease with 30 days' notice," she said, sliding a form across the desk. "Do it quietly. File it directly with your property management company. Don't tell him until you're ready." I left her office with a folder full of instructions, and something I hadn't felt in months: control. The next morning, I walked into Chase Bank, not our usual Bank of America where Ethan might know the tellers. The branch in Ballard was far enough from our regular routes that I wouldn't run into anyone familiar. The new account specialist, a young woman named Amy with kind eyes and discreet professionalism, didn't ask why I needed an individual account when I mentioned I was married. "We see this a lot," she said quietly, her fingers moving over the keyboard. "Would you like paperless statements?" "Yes," I said. "Everything electronic." She helped me transfer exactly half of our joint savings. $11,200. Money that represented years of careful budgeting and vacations we'd never take. The debit card would arrive at my office in 7 to 10 business days. The checks I'd never use went into my purse like evidence of a crime I was about to commit. Walking out of Chase, my phone buzzed. "Ethan, what's for dinner?" I texted back, "Working late tonight. Fend for yourself." The lie came easily. Probably because I'd learned from the best. I stopped at a small cafe in Ballard, ordering chamomile tea with hands that trembled slightly as I handed over my new debit card for the first time. The transaction went through. Such a small thing, but it felt like the first breath after being underwater. The security cameras arrived 2 days later, delivered by Amazon while Ethan was at his morning workout in Fremont. The box was heavier than expected: 4 cameras, a central hub, cables that would need hiding. I had spent the night before watching YouTube tutorials while Ethan slept beside me, learning about angles, blind spots, and motion detection. The living room camera went up first, positioned to capture the front door and main space. Another in the kitchen, angled toward the dining area. One in the hallway, facing our bedroom door. The fourth tucked into the bookshelf, nearly invisible among my paperbacks, covering the spot where Ethan usually sat with his laptop. When I opened the app, 4 live feeds appeared on my phone that I could check them from anywhere: record footage, receive alerts when motion was detected. The first test came that very evening. Ethan arriving home at 6 p.m. normal time, empty-handed. But the next Wednesday, the cameras caught him packing an overnight bag at 3 in the afternoon. While he was supposedly in back-to-back meetings, he folded his clothes carefully. The gray sweater I'd bought him for Christmas, the designer jeans, the cologne he reserved for special occasions. The unexpected network of support began forming without my asking. Paula Brooks from accounting had started forwarding me things. "Thought you should see this," her emails would read. Attached were Ethan's expense reports showing dinners for 2 at restaurants I'd never been to, hotel charges during lunch hours, Uber rides to addresses in Fremont, Leo Grant, our building's doorman began greeting me with extra warmth. One evening as I picked up my mail, he said casually, "Your husband left pretty early this morning. Around 5 a.m. Hope everything's okay with that work emergency." There had been no emergency. Ethan had told me he was going to the gym. "Thanks, Leo," I said, understanding the quiet gift he was giving me. Even Nina Ross, the barista downstairs, had noticed that she'd been making my latte for 2 years, knew I liked an extra shot on Mondays, remembered my name without asking. The day after I installed the cameras, she handed me my coffee and tilted her head. "You okay, honey? You seem different lately." "Just work stuff," I said automatically. She nodded slowly. "That husband of yours used to come in every morning, you know. Haven't seen him in months. Now he gets coffee at that place in Fremont." Then she pulled out her phone, showing me Ethan's public Instagram I'd stopped checking months ago. But there he was, tagged at Lighthouse Coffee, Fremont. Posted by someone with the username at Lydia_Cross47. Men, Nina sighed. They think they're so clever. By New Year's Eve, just 2 days away, I had a system. Bank statements in one folder. Screenshots in another. Camera footage backed up to the cloud at a written timeline of events. Vivian's idea. Contact information for 3 divorce attorneys besides Vivian, just in case. And pinned to my bulletin board, the business card for Dr. Eliza Nguyen, the therapist Dr. Chun had recommended. Each piece of evidence was another brick in the wall I was building, between my old life and whatever came next. Ethan had no idea. While he was constructing his affair, I was constructing my exit. He still kissed my forehead each morning with that distracted, obligatory touch. Still said, "Love you," when he left, the words hollow as an echo. Still came home smelling like jasmine and vanilla. Lydia's perfume now as familiar to me as his cologne. But I was no longer the woman waiting with cold lasagna, hoping for explanations. I was the woman with cameras recording his lies, bank accounts he didn't know about, and a lawyer on speed dial. The war hadn't been declared yet, but I was ready. Every document filed. Every dollar secured. Every ally identified. They were all weapons waiting to be deployed. The apartment felt different now. Even though nothing visible had changed, it was no longer our home, it was my surveillance zone. Each room held secrets. The hidden cameras, Vivian's business card tucked inside my jewelry box, and the new bank statements arriving only in my email. Did I move through that space like a spy in enemy territory? Calm, precise, patient, gathering evidence for a confrontation that felt as inevitable as sunrise. New Year's Eve arrived with the kind of bitter cold that made Seattle huddle indoors. Ethan left for Connor's party around 9, kissing my forehead with those dry lips that felt like a stranger's touch. Connor was in Tahoe with his girlfriend. I knew because he'd posted Instagram stories all day, but I said nothing, just watched Ethan adjust his collar in the hallway mirror, spraying on cologne like armor against his own conscience. The apartment fell silent after he left. I poured myself a glass of the Malbec we'd been saving for a special occasion. Realizing this qualified, I drank alone. Midnight came and went with no text from my husband, no champagne kiss, no promise of a better year ahead. The city outside celebrated while I sat in darkness, the only light coming from my laptop. Our wedding photos lived in a folder titled Forever. Such naive optimism in that name. I opened it. 5 years younger versions of ourselves smiled back, his eyes focused on me, my expression stupid with hope. Delete. The beach ceremony vanished. Delete. Our first dance disappeared. Delete. The cake cutting. The speeches. My father's proud smile. Each click was surgical, painful but necessary. By 1:30 a.m., the folder was empty. 5 years compressed into nothing but blank digital space. I moved to the living room, unable to face our bed. The cold void on his side had become permanent. The security app showed the apartment from 4 angles. The timestamp ran like a countdown I didn't yet understand. Sleep was impossible. I made coffee instead, too strong, bitter enough to sting my eyes. Ethan's location showed him at Lydia's house. Not Connor's party, not a club downtown. Lydia's Colonial on Maple Avenue, where Gavin's framed photos still hung on the walls. At 2:15 a.m., I opened my laptop again to update the timeline for Vivian. January 1st, 12 a.m., Ethan claims to be at Connor's party. Connor is in Tahoe. Ethan's location: Maple Avenue, Fremont. I was typing that note when my phone vibrated violently on the table. An emergency notification. That specific tone Ethan had programmed for himself, reserved for real emergencies. 2:47 a.m. I'm at Lydia's house. Pick me up or it's over. The audacity was almost breathtaking. He wanted me to drive across the city at 3 in the morning to retrieve him from his affair. As if I were a chauffeur for his bad decisions. I read it 3 times. With each pass, something hard and solid formed in my chest. This was it, the moment everything crystallized, and my fingers didn't shake as I typed. It's over then. 4 words. No emotion. No explanation. Just fact. But I wasn't finished. Gavin's contact was still saved from the day of his farewell party. The irony perfect. I forwarded Ethan's location pin with surgical precision, adding one simple line. Thought you should know where your wife is entertaining my husband at 2:47 a.m. You're in Dubai, right? The second I hit send, my phone exploded with incoming calls. Ethan first. Declined. Then Lydia. Declined. Then an unknown number, probably her landline. Declined again. The screen pulsed with notifications buzzing like a wasp nest. I stared at it for a long moment, then held down the power button until the world went black and silent. The stillness that followed was sacred, like the moment after confession, except I wasn't seeking forgiveness. I was granting myself absolution. When I finally lay down, the bed felt different, not empty. Liberated. I slid into the center instead of clinging to my usual side, and fell into the first real sleep I'd had in months. I know, half awake, listening for the sound of a key in the lock. No waiting for lies disguised as explanations. Just silence and peace. I dreamed of rooms with white walls and sunlight, of painting them in colors Ethan would hate. Deep burgundy, forest green, midnight blue. I dreamed of quiet mornings with no anxiety clawing at my chest. When I woke, sunlight streamed through the blinds I'd forgotten to close. For once, I didn't feel dread. No checking my phone. No guessing what story he'd tell next. I brewed coffee slowly in the French press, letting the smell fill the kitchen. My phone sat face down on the counter, still powered off. A black mirror reflecting nothing. 8 a.m. Curiosity 1. I powered it on. The screen vibrated for 30 seconds straight. Notifications piling up like debris after a storm. 23 missed calls. 57 messages. 19 voicemails. The first one from Ethan. Baby, please, I can explain. It's not what it looks like. Lydia had too much to drink. I was just making sure she got home safe. Please call me back. Then Lydia's, sobbing and furious. You vindictive witch. You've ruined everything. Gavin's flying home. You've destroyed my life. And finally, Gavin's at 3:45 a.m. Aurora, I'm at Dubai International Airport. I've booked the first flight home. My lawyer will be in touch about the evidence. Thank you for having the courage to do what needed to be done. I set the phone down and exhaled. That's when I heard footsteps on the stairs outside. Heavy, uneven, desperate. Through the peephole, I saw Ethan standing there at 8:15 a.m., looking like a man made from broken pieces of his former self, wrinkled shirt, coffee stain, red eyes, a gas station cup trembling in his hand. I opened the door but didn't step aside. The cold January air rushed between us, carrying the smell of stale alcohol, Lydia's perfume, and panic. Aurora, thank God, he said, moving toward me. I held up a hand. You can say what you need to from there. Ethan's face shifted, surprise, hurt, then anger, cycling through like channels on a broken television. It's my apartment too, he said, his voice cracking. Actually, it's not. I pulled a document from the side table where I placed it days ago, waiting for this moment. You were removed from the lease last week. 30 days notice was filed with management on December 28th. You have until January 27th to collect your belongings. The paper trembled in my hand. He didn't take it, just stared as if I'd spoken in another language. The gas station coffee slipped from his fingers, splattering on the concrete like a dark bloom. You can't do that. The apartment's in my name, I said calmly. Always has been. My credit, my deposit, my signature. You were listed as an authorized occupant. That authorization has been legally revoked. The words were Vivian's, but the power in them was mine. Your belongings will be available for pickup by appointment. Ethan leaned against the doorframe. His legs seemed to forget how to hold him up. For the first time I saw him clearly. Not the charming executive, not the husband I once loved, not even the cheater. Just a 34-year-old man who'd gambled everything and lost. Lydia kicked me out, he whispered. The moment Gavin called her, she threw my clothes on the lawn. Said I wasn't worth losing her marriage over. Said I was just entertainment. I wanted to feel something, sympathy, anger, vindication, but there was nothing left. Only the quiet observation of consequence. My phone buzzed. I should take this, I said, beginning to close the door. Aurora, please. My mother knows some good hotels, I replied, then shut the door with a soft final click. The voice on the phone was Haley Cross, breathless. Aurora, you have to hear this. Lydia completely lost it. She's been throwing Ethan's stuff on the lawn for the past hour. The neighbors called the cops. She called him a placeholder, said he was convenient but replaceable. The irony was perfect. Ethan had destroyed our marriage for someone who viewed him as temporary. The best part, Haley continued, barely containing her satisfaction, is that Gavin's already contacted a divorce attorney. Lydia's about to lose everything. The house, the cars, they're all in his name. Even her credit cards were on his accounts. When she hung up, I made breakfast. Real breakfast. Scrambled eggs, toast, orange juice. Food for a person who intended to live. Halfway through eating, my phone rang again. Rachel Mendez, HR director at our company. Aurora, I'm sorry to call on a holiday, but this is urgent. We've received concerning information about expense report irregularities involving Ethan Bennett and Lydia Cross. We understand you might have documentation that could help our investigation. I have everything, I said. Receipts, statements, dates, all cross-referenced. Could you email those today? We're opening a formal investigation Monday morning. I sent them within the hour. Every receipt from the Fremont gym, every dinner bill from nights Ethan claimed to be working. The pattern was damning to be. 11:30, my phone buzzed again, this time Ethan's mother. Aurora. Patricia Bennett began without greeting, her voice shaking. He's standing in my driveway destroyed because you couldn't forgive one mistake. It wasn't one mistake, I said evenly. It was 6 months of calculated deceit. He needs support, not abandonment. Marriage is about working through problems. He made his choice repeatedly, I replied. You're heartless, she hissed. Throwing him out like garbage, humiliating him publicly, heartless. Heartless, I repeated quietly. Patricia, heartless is sending an ultimatum from another woman's house at 2:47 a.m. Heartless is lying every day for 6 months. I just stopped enabling it. The line went dead. I deleted her number. Another small act of peace. By noon, my camera app showed Ethan and Connor loading boxes into a rental van. Ethan moved like an old man, shoulders sagging under the weight of what he'd done. He looked up at my window once, holding a box labeled wedding albums. I didn't wave. I just watched. An hour later, Vivian called. Court date set, February 15th. Bring everything. The hearing was quiet and merciless. Vivian presented the evidence with surgical precision. Hotel bills, expense reports, screenshots, gym memberships. Ethan's attorney stammered through objections that evaporated under facts. When the footage from my cameras played, Ethan packing overnight bags for late meetings, the judge shook her head. Mr. Bennett, she said, did you believe your wife wouldn't notice $18,000 in unexplained charges? Ethan mumbled something about stress. These aren't mistakes, the judge replied. They're systematic deception. The ruling was everything Vivian had promised, the apartment mine, the savings mine, half of Ethan's 401k mine. His debts, including the credit cards he used for Lydia, his, and he would pay my attorney's fees. Petition for dissolution granted, Judge Nakamura announced. Walking out of that courthouse felt like stepping out of a storm into sunlight. 2 months later, in March, Gavin texted, coffee? I owe you a thank you. We met in a small cafe in Wallingford. He looked rested, lighter. You saved my life, he said. We saved each other. I replied. We laughed, not bitterly but freely. Months passed. I told my family everything. My mother, Margaret, deleted Ethan from every family photo. He erased himself, she said. My father raised his glass to Aurora's freedom. And that was the moment I knew I was truly free. I earned a promotion soon after, Director of Compliance and Ethics. The irony wasn't lost on me. Ethan's fraud had created the position. My integrity had earned it. Now my apartment is filled with plants, books, and quiet. Colors Ethan would have hated. Sometimes, when Seattle rain drums against the glass, I think about that night. The message that ended everything. Pick me up or it's over. I smile every time. Because peace really does taste better than revenge. And at 2:47 a.m., when the city sleeps and the world holds its breath, I sleep too, deeply, completely, and finally freed. My favorite part was when Aurora simply replied, "It's over then," and forwarded Ethan's location to Gavin without a hint of hesitation. What was your favorite moment of justice in her story? Drop it in the comments below. Don't miss more empowering stories of freedom, courage, and quiet strength. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload.